From Washington, this is VOA News. The Ebola outbreak has crossed over into Senegal, and a terror threat in Great Britain. I'm Joe Palca, reporting from Washington. The head of the European Commission has condemned Moscow's significant incursions into eastern Ukraine. The Commission said Jose Manuel Barroso had a very frank exchange with Russian President Vladimir Putin on Friday. During the phone call, Mr. Barroso said escalations in the months-long conflict are running afoul of the European Union's efforts to reach a diplomatic solution. NATO has called on Russia to cease its illegal military operations in eastern Ukraine that it says are aimed at destabilizing the country. The Ebola outbreak in West Africa has now spread to Senegal, which announced its first case on Friday. The health minister told reporters that the infected person is a Guinean university student who sought treatment at a hospital in Senegal's capital of Dakar this week. She said the young man admitted to having contact with Ebola patients in Guinea. Senegal is the fifth country linked to the regional Ebola outbreak, which has killed more than 1,500 people this year, mostly in Guinea, Liberia, and Sierra Leone. Dr. Tom Frieden, director of the U.S. Centers for Disease Control, warns that Ebola can spread beyond West Africa if it is not stopped soon.
If we don't stop it here, we're going to be dealing with it for years around the world, but we can still stop it.
Dr. Frieden, who was speaking Thursdays in Liberia, the country with the highest number of cases of deaths from the virus. Rebel groups from northern Mali have agreed to end hostilities and present a united front ahead of peace talks with the Malian government that begin in Algiers on September the 1st. Representatives from two rebel groupings have signed an agreement to end fighting and work towards a sustainable solution. This is VOA News. The Pentagon says U.S. military operations against the Islamic State, Britain raised its terror threat level from substantial to severe on Friday, as British Prime Minister David Cameron said the poisonous Islamist extremist narrative is a big problem for his country and the globe. Al Pessin has more from London for VOA.
The new British terror threat level is called severe, which means an attack is highly likely, but there's no information about a specific terrorist plan. Prime Minister David Cameron said the decision was made by an independent government commission because the rise of the group in Iraq and Syria, once called ISIL or ISIS, which now calls itself the Islamic State, poses a threat to Britain.
What we're facing in Iraq now with ISIL is a greater and deeper threat to our security than we have known before.
Cameron said about 500 British citizens have gone to join the group in Syria and Iraq. Those men can easily re-enter Britain. Al Pessin, VOA News, London.
Mr. Cameron says terrorists have perverted the Islamic faith to promote their violent agenda. The Pentagon says U.S. military operations against Islamic State militants in Iraq are costing on average $7.5 million per day. Rear Admiral John Kirby said Friday the cost in Iraq has increased as activities have intensified since they started in mid-June. The news comes a day after President Barack Obama downplayed the possibility of adding U.S. airstrikes against Islamic extremists in Syria. The United States Congress is out of session, most all of its members on summer break, with the midterm elections looming this November. Both sides have been following the crisis. This is Republican Congressman Walter Jones from North Carolina.
You might know that I joined Jim McGovern and Barbara Lee in writing a letter to Speaker Boehner asking him that we have a debate and a debate on the floor of the House and a resolution saying to the President that any expansion of our military in Iraq or any other part of the country, he must come to Congress to ask for support.
Republicans, never known to cut the president much slack, prompt this response from Democratic lawmaker Kathy Castor from Florida.
I don't have much faith that the GOP leadership in the House will actually have a debate, notwithstanding a vote.
President Obama says the administration is still working on a comprehensive plan to deal with the terrorist group. The whereabouts of 44 United Nations peacekeepers abducted by Syrian militants on Thursday remains unknown, following a day-long search in the Golan Heights. For more on all these stories, visit our website at voanews.com. Joe Palca reporting from Washington.
That's the latest world news from VOA.